right, so first off, all praise to Yahweh, Bohoshem, Yahweh Shai, Bohoshem Rakaha Kodash, or in English, all praise to Yahweh, in the name of the Son, Yahweh Shai, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, otherwise known as GMS for short, but also known as the Prophets of Doom. These are where I have learned this truth and where I am still learning this truth. And also shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I am of that number. All right, this video is going to be the last, I believe, Lord willing, as far as right now, on Revelation chapter 13. And what I mean by that is that we keep going over these things over and over, all right, ad nauseum, so that the elect, the ones whom the Lord deems worthy of knowing this truth, in order to receive the Thawa, or escape certain destruction, all right, may hear these words and be activated, all right. So we're going to pick right up where the last video left off, all right. Again, I want to state fair use, all right, as we stated in the video previous to the previous video, all right. All the fair use definitions and descriptions go along, or are applicable to these videos, all right. So we're going to pick right up, speaking again about Revelation 13:16. So let's read that again. It reads, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." Okay. So the word mark in the context of Revelation 13:16, all right, goes back to the Greek word, all right, 5480, if you have a Strong's Concordance, all right, which goes to the word charagma, all right. It says a stamp, an imprinted mark. Okay, it says of the mark stamped on the forehead or the right hand as the badge of the followers of the ones that are against the Messiah, or what the world calls Antichrist, okay, which are people. You should understand all this by now, listening to the previous videos, all right. Lord willing, you understand. It says the mark branded upon horses. Again, what is that for? Right? To show ownership. All right. It says a thing carved, sculpture, graven work of idolatrous images. All right. The root word for charagma is charax, which is G5482. It says to sharpen to a point through the idea of scratching. It says a pale or stake, a palisade. So what you should be thinking here is syringe. All right. There are we use the example of we use an example of a company called Dangerous Things, or Walletmore, all right, where they show how they introduce these micro C-hips into the body. There's a big syringe looking thing. You push it into your skin, and then in goes the micro C-hip. Okay. All right. So this is what you should think of when hearing the root word of charagma, which is charax. All right. So this system, all right, is ready to roll out, and each C-hip carries a barcode. Each C-hip carries a barcode. So once this barcode is inside of you, you become a product for the banking families, right? Okay, they will know everything that you are doing, whether you or everything you are doing, right? Where you are going, what you are buying, how much CO2 you are putting into the atmosphere. This barcode is a part of the plan of Esau Edom. All right. So this is how he plans to take over the world and have control over each and every one of us. The first fruits, all right, whom have been ordained before the foundation of the world to rule with Yahushai as joint heirs and as sons of Yahweh. All right, so let's read Romans really quickly. Romans 11 and 4. Romans chapter 11 and verse 4. It says, "But what saith the answer of Yahweh Bahoshem Yahushai unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal." All right. As far as today is concerned, the Lord has reserved those people, all right, that are not going to bow the knee. They're not going to receive this mark of the beast. All right. Revelation 13, 16 through 18, one more time before we get through these videos. Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18. It reads, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So now you should know that these verses are speaking about the RFID micro C-HIP. All right, there should be no doubt, and there won't be any doubt for the true men of the Lord. All right. So let's get to these videos really quickly here. Hold on, let me check this time. All right, yeah, I'm pretty sure this phone fit the videos. Again, fair use. All right. And these videos aren't that long, so let's go ahead and get to it. Hold on a second here. All right, so listen up more than anything, okay? Let me see. Wonder if I can get this. I probably should have recorded it. Yeah, let's do this. All right, so all credit goes to this Curiosity Stream, and again, fair use. All right, so listen up. Hopefully you can hear this.
A strange turn of events had sparked that epiphany on Miami Beach. It began with a Philadelphia area grocery chain executive in the 1940s who'd simply had enough. Running his operation was a nightmare, and the problem was industry-wide. You had people manually putting price stickers on products. You had people manually then hand keying those prices into a cash register.
Oh yeah, so before we get on to that, I do still want to remind you again of what omnipotent means. All right, he who holds sway over all things. Remember, prophecy leads to all things, and in turn, all things point right back to prophecy. All right, so this all lined up, all right, because the Lord made it all line up. All right, again, omnipotent means he who holds sway over all things. All right, I did want to just remind everyone of that. All right, so listen up.
And really spending time with every single product that a shopper was taking through the checkout. That's Carrie Wilkie from GS1 US, the organization that coordinates and standardizes barcodes in the United States. There was a lot of inefficiency and a lot of time spent for the consumers in the grocery store, really in the checkout lane, waiting to pay and exit the store. So this supermarket executive visited a dean at Drexel and begged him to help engineer a solution to all his store's inefficiencies. The Drexel dean brushed the executive off, but one of the postgrads overheard the conversation and found it pretty interesting. The post-grad, Bob Silver, mentioned the conversation to one of his friends. That friend was Joseph Woodland. And together, the two thought maybe they could invent something to help the supermarket executive.
Also, keep in mind that we did mention that George Joseph Lauer, that name right there, right? He was a co-creator of this barcode. Okay, as we just seen here, so was Woodland, and I think what was his name, Simon or something. I can't remember. Let's. Let's see, because they mentioned these names. Silver, not Simon. Silver. Okay.
This random game of telephone is what got Woodland to move down to Florida and start drawing dots and dashes in the sand on Miami Beach. But you probably wouldn't recognize what he ended up with.
When you join Portnox, your organization is automatically issued a root certificate, which you can view in settings. Then,
the first early incarnation of a barcode was actually in a bullseye shape. Woodland had enough foresight to realize that when store checkers would swipe items over the sensor, they would probably do so in all sorts of different orientations. Even if every label was fixed perfectly to, let's say, a can of soup, it might be upside down, horizontal, or vertical when the checker tried to swipe it. This created a problem because he was going to base his code design off of Morse code. And like the letters in a word, a Morse code style design wouldn't be able to read from any angle. So Woodland solved this problem by expanding the dots and dashes into circular lines, which would make it omnidirectional. Or in other words, essentially copy that Morse-inspired code into an infinite number of orientations for the sensor. Looking down at his sketch and reveling in the prospect that he may have just invented something big, Woodland relayed the idea back to Bob Silver. Silver loves the idea, so much that the two got to work sketching out the mechanical schematics, finalizing their code design, and filing for a patent later that same year. Then, they began constructing a prototype, but soon realized the system wasn't quite working. The problem? This was all pretty advanced stuff. Theoretically, it made sense, but the actual available components hadn't caught up to the theory. It'd basically be like trying to build an iPhone with consumer computer parts from the 1980s. It just wasn't going to happen. Specifically, Woodland and Silver struggled with the light sensor. They couldn't find a bright enough light for the sensor to clearly interpret the code. They also lacked access to any modern computing technology to log the information that came out of the scanner. Woodland, hoping to get the help he needed to make the system work, soon took a job at IBM. But even that computing and electronics juggernaut couldn't provide the tech to get it off the ground. So Woodland shelved the idea. Almost 2 decades would pass before it saw the light of day again. By the late 1960s, it became clear that the grocery executive pleading with the Drexel team years earlier was not alone. So the grocery industry got together to start talking about ways to harness technology to fix the inefficiencies in their stores. They really needed something that was an intra-industry identifier that would uniquely say what was a can of beans versus a box of cereal so that they could move product more efficiently and move product more quickly and cut down costs and really cut down wait times for the consumers who were standing in line at grocery stores. The chain Kroger helped kick off the industry's efforts in 1966, when it released a pamphlet soliciting help developing a scanning system from electronics companies. Their search led them to the Radio Corporation of America, or RCA.
RCA, the most trusted name in electronics.
RCA was an enormous electronics firm with a reputation that would rival Google or Amazon today. And just like these present-day tech giants, RCA was hungry to break into new markets. A dedicated group of RCA engineers and researchers took on the challenge. Soon, they found Woodland and Silver's patent, and RCA's team realized that with new advances in technology, they could make it work. Two advances in particular changed the game. The first was the microchip. Invented in 1958, it set the groundwork for advanced compact computing that could read, log, and interpret data from the scanner. The second was the laser. Invented in 1960, focused light and lasers would finally offer enough brightness for an electronic sensor to clearly and consistently read a printed code on a label. By 1972, RCA's team had created a working bullseye barcode system, ready for Kroger to test out in a real store.
How to stop estrogen spikes in men over 40.
There are 3 areas on a man's body that indicate a hormone problem.
But Kroger worried customers might reject it. Lasers were mainly associated with advanced military applications. Kroger wondered if customers might fear a death ray, as it was popularly referred to, in their supermarket aisle. Kroger also worried customers might not trust computers, which were still new, to read and tally prices correctly. Hoping for the best, Kroger went ahead with rolling out their new checkout system on July 3rd, 1972, in one of their Cincinnati stores. It was a success. The system worked. It scanned codes, it tallied checkouts, and sales of the Cincinnati store went up, suggesting customers actually liked it. A group of high-ranking industry representatives soon toured the store. Seeing the technology work, along with an increasingly urgent need to control costs as the industry's already slim profit margins dipped below 1%, renewed the industry leader's commitment to scaling up the barcode. But while the Bullseye Code prototype worked in Kroger's one store, getting everyone in the industry on the same page was tough. It took months of negotiating and glad-handing. But after dozens of meetings and calls, the biggest players in both industries finally got behind the broad vision of putting a small label on every package. They would call it the Universal Product Code, or UPC. The one last thing to do was settle on the design of the standardized symbol itself. The code would need to be small and neat, a maximum of 1.5 square inches. It would need to be printable with existing technology, readable from any direction, and readable at speed, meaning from a swift swipe or scan. The grocery industry then accepted pitches based on these criteria from large electronics firms. Looking at the proposals that came in, everybody thought that the RCA Bullseye was going to be the symbol that was selected. But then, one engineer at IBM flipped the script. That engineer was George Laurer.
Introducing Programma into the studio's practice
Hold on a second
really
here.
just streamlined like a lot of processes with it.
Click on this other video. I think it's about here.
At IBM flipped the script. That engineer was George Laurer. Laurer doubted Woodland's circular design could work at industry scale. The whole reason the code originally had a bullseye shape was to ensure it could be scanned from any angle. The technology was really difficult, though. It was difficult to print it, it was time consuming, it was expensive to print it, and the bullseye didn't lend itself to holding very much data. Laura was able to figure out, though, that a sequence of vertical bars could also be scanned from any angle. You just had to configure the laser a little differently. What they discovered with the bars and spaces is they could put more information in a smaller space. To prove to IBM's higher-ups that his more data-rich design was just as practical as the bullseye design, Laura got an ace softball player to pitch beanbag ashtrays with barcodes fixed to them across the scanner. And as they whirled by, the scanner correctly logged each one's code. Suddenly sold on the idea, IBM's brass then pitched Laura's redesign to the grocery industry. But something only IBM could offer, computing power, sealed the deal. As the story goes, the representative from IBM waited until the end of the pitch meeting. Then he pulled out a small, wafer-sized disc and said, This wafer contained all the computing power necessary to run a checkout system. IBM had another ace in the hole too. Remember Joseph Woodland, who created the original bullseye design? And how he went to work for IBM in the 1950s when he couldn't get the technology off the ground himself? Well, Woodland was still at IBM in the 1970s, and even he endorsed Laura's redesign. Woodland took that endorsement a step further when he went to meet with grocery industry representatives himself, reiterating how the RCA Bullseye probably would hold less data, prove harder to print, and not fit as well on small items. Sure enough, the grocery industry ditched RCA's Bullseye for IBM's vertical bar design. The world met the modern barcode in Troy, Ohio on June 26, 1974 at 8:01 a.m. in Marsh Supermarket. In a scene that would have looked much like this. A man named Clyde Dawson approached the register with a pack of Wrigley's gum. Sharon Buchanan, a 31-year-old cashier, swiped the gum's barcode into her new high-tech checkout system. And with that 67-cent purchase, a small-town supermarket thrust the global economy into a new era. But the grocery industry had no idea the barcode would become so prolific. The thought was that they would assign maybe a couple of thousand identifiers, somewhere between 7 and 11 digits. They would close up shop and they would be done. They were actually just getting started. Once industries saw the efficiencies that we were gaining in grocery, there was a lot of interest to move beyond grocery and use the barcode in other ways. The barcode was really doing what it set out to do. It was increasing efficiency in the distribution network, and it was really increasing efficiency for consumers. So we were seeing far shorter checkout lines and far shorter wait times in grocery stores. Then there were the new big box stores. By the 1970s, companies like Kmart, Target, and Walmart had become a favorite new place to shop for Americans. As these companies grew into billion-dollar operations, they started using barcodes, allowing them to keep track of an ever greater number of goods on their vast store floors. Walmart in particular can credit much of its success to the barcode. The company had an aggressive expansion strategy. It helped fuel that expansion with an advanced logistics network, the sprawling collection of warehouses, trucks.
I just want to pause it there for a second, because I'm going to go to another quick video. But you get the point with this, all right? The Lord made a time and a place for everything, all right? Over time, this thing came into existence, and here we are today. But let's visit something real quick. I'm going to pause this because I'm running out of time on this phone. But hold on a second. I want to talk about, just real quick, show a quick video on this blockchain. Hold on a second here. All right. I do want to end the video with this. We've played this before, but title here, World Government Summit 2022. Dr. Pippa Malmgren talks about blockchain and digital currencies. Since we mentioned blockchain and what was that? CBDCs, all right, central bank digital currencies. I want you to just listen to what she's saying, and then we'll cut the video.
Well, it may be a bit late for that. I remember talking to an Australian diplomat at one point about this break between the US and China and said, you know, both sides are going to say, whose team are you on? And he said, our job is to make sure the question never arises. But the question has arisen. And so I think
they're going to ask which team you're on, but the whole world is headed this way, all right? Digital.
we have to go deeper. And it's not about the US versus China. It's about what underpins a world order is always the financial system. I was very privileged. My father was an advisor to Nixon when they came off the gold standard in 71. And so I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else.
Just to point out in the crowd, you see a lot of Ishmael. All right, Edomites, Ishmael. And this I just pointed that out, and you can refer to Psalm, the 83rd chapter, or starting at verse 1, and read on down to see why. Okay, but let's go on.
And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. In my opinion, we're going to need a digital constitution of human rights if we're going to have digital money. But also, this new money will be sovereign in nature. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well. And the question is, will that new system of digital money and digital accounting accommodate the competing needs of the citizens of all these locations so that every human being has a chance to have a better life? Because that's the only measure of whether a world order really serves.
All right, so, man, these are the times, okay? So, hope this came through as sincere and edifying, and I hope you understand the number of the beast, all right? So, hope this came through as sincere and edifying, and with that, all praise to Yahweh. In the name of his Son, Yahweh Shai, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and bishops of the GMS, all otherwise known as the prophets of doom. These are where I have learned this truth and where I am still learning this truth. And also shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I am of that number. And Lord willing, we'll see you in the next video. Shalom.